Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Hello, everybody. I am Ross Morasso, and welcome to the show. My returning guest today, George Turnage, a.k.a. Papa Yatande, and one of the leaders at the Peristyle Haitian Sanctuary out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Welcome back to the show, George.
Thank you for having me, Ross.
Now, in our previous discussion on our last show, we were taking a walk down memory lane over how you got involved in your Haitian sanctuary and became aware and got in your journey in the voodoo religion. And then we sort of left off with this concept, name, you tell me, Loa. And then we ran out of time. So what is that?
Okay, the concept of Loa, if we want to go back all the way to the time of the Kemet or the Kushite religions in Egypt, they had a association with forces, and we call them forces because we don't consider them gods. There's only one God. And so they called them forces, and they called them Neter. And the reason they called them Neter was because Neter is the actual basis of the name nature. And every force had a connection in nature because of the connection in life. And what that simply meant is air, land, forest, sea, or ocean, rivers, blah, blah. And so that's why they as time and cultures and language evolved in certain places, particularly in Dahomey and in Abomey, and then through the gathering of what would be called, we call captives, others call slaves, in the Caribbean, they began to come together to devise a language called the Quil Monde Shajma. And in it, they began to refer to those forces in nature as Loa.
So Loa, as in, well, you then said Neter, or then nature. So Loa is like this force of nature. So I'm going to summarize here, but go ahead and correct me if I'm misunderstanding this.
Go ahead.
Since there was only one God, is Loa basically that section, if you will, of the power of God that governs all of nature on planet Earth?
Yeah, not only that, they have cosmic connection as well as human or even some animal connection, as well as plant and other types of elements in nature. You know, all of this stuff is connected through energy, just like a battery, the positive, negative aspects of what makes the light turn on, you know, what makes something go, you know. And this is what Loa or Orisha you may have heard of, and or the Neter. This is the type of energies that they possess.
So in the voodoo religion, then, are there thanks or rituals or celebrations specifically honoring Loa then?
Oh, of course. In giving thanks and honor to God, the Almighty, and we believe and understand God not to be a male energy, but an energy of both male and female. They call it the Mawu Lisa. You may have seen it if you got a chance to see the Woman King. It was one of the things that they do in voodoo and certain in other African faiths that does not put the man on top, but put the man and woman on the level of which they belong, because one cannot exist without the other. There's just no way a man is going to produce a baby, you know, or anything of that nature. So the power of both the male and female energy, not just in human nature, but in pretty much everything, is an equality.
So then the voodoo religion would not be a patriarchal style.
You know, there are so many people who try to make it out to be, especially with the recognition of male forces like Shango, for example, which is quite popular in the Caribbean and in Africa, because Shango is one of the children of Olodumare, one of the actual, which is one of the names they refer to as the Almighty. But like with Ogun, or in Voodoo, and Zakamede, and different ones, Legba, and we can just go on and on. There are certain ones of us who try to make the male entity seems to be, unequivalent to the female, but that would be a terrible mistake, because the feminine energy, especially with those like Oshun, which in Voodoo we know as Ejuli Fuida, or Yemanja. And when I say those first names, like Oshun or Yemanja, we're speaking particularly in Yoruba or other forces out of West Africa, and their equivalents are also connected there in Egypt. When the great migration out of the east to the west and the formation of empires, they took with them their cultures. I mean, it's the only thing that they had. They took a lot of other things, but the naming of their cultures, and especially when the founding of Yoruba land by Oduduwa, which is one of the great conquerors in that area, had established the Yoruba land, and so forth. But the feminine forces like Oshun and as opposed to Jili Frida or Yemenja, like Jili Danto, and then you have Ma'aizan. I mean, when you consider what they do in nature and what roles they play, there's there's no way you can disconnect their energy or importance to any of the male forces. For example, those females deal with things like reproduction, with things like ocean, river, rain, and in some aspects of forest and land. So if you take those things away, you pretty much you have nothing that any of the other energies in nature can actually function on. You become like Mars, for example. You won't be able to have a complete planet that's sustainable to life.
Often when I introduce you on the show, I say that you are one of the leaders of the Le Peristyle Haitian Sanctuary. Is that accurate to say? Like, can there be a single leader in the religion or your community that you're overseeing, or are you paired up, one man and one woman?
It can be that way, what they call a ungan, which is what I am, a guohungan, meaning I have achieved the highest status, and a guomambo, who has achieved the highest status, is what a woman is called. I am was the understudy of Guomambo, who actually founded Le Peristyle. And when I came, she had just established it. I arrived because I left school. I think you remember me saying that in order for me to become anything or successful in life, I was told by one of the African students who told me that I had to leave and go seek the priesthood.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered Mambo. Someone took me and introduced us, and then from that point, the energy, we connected. Eventually, she would become my wife, but she was always, and first and foremost, the founder and the leader of Le Peristyle Haitian Sanctuary. I was her second, so to speak. And though we worked tirelessly together in understanding and teaching and learning new things together as we grew, because we were both from the United States. So our travels, not only to Haiti, Cuba, Nigeria, Brazil, you name it, just everywhere we were able to go to continue learning and building on the information that we knew. But first and foremost, she was the head. Now, in certain sanctuaries, it is exactly like what you're describing. The equality between the husband and wife are on the same level, because they may have founded their faith together. Even if one may have come before. And that was pretty much like myself and my wife, though she had emerged first to discover and become initiated in Voodoo Aizan. She initiated me, and then I grew up in the ranks, and then all of a sudden here I am, after 45 years. Even the Haitians that I know consider me to be a master of this faith.
So do you have a co-leader now, or does the proverbial cheese stand alone for the time being?
Stand alone for the time being. The thing is, after I lost my wife,
Mhm.
we just simply moved on. We haven't. It's 1 year, 1 day. So on March the 9th would be that year and that day. Then we can go along and consider to do ceremony, ritual, initiations, and things like that. And then we will see who emerge forth. But I will forever be the father, or their what they call Papa. In Africa, they would call you Baba, things like that.
So if you were to go to visit Africa with your name, would you be Baba Yatande?
Most of them still call me Baba. I have a chieftaincy from Oduremo, which is Ogun State in Nigeria, but it was recognized by the Uni, which is the superior king in Nigeria, in Ile-Ife, one of the descendants of Oduduwa. And that's how you become recognized and authentic. You don't just do like a lot of people are doing today, especially from the internet. They just go to Africa and they 2-week vacation, and they come home, and all of a sudden they're called a Babalawo, which is one of the highest level of a priest, or Ianifa. And it's just wrong, because
Mm.
when I tell you I studied this for 45 years, I didn't just sit around waiting for information to come. You have to go get it. You have to work. You have to fail. You have to be frustrated, just like if you were getting your undergrad, your master's, and your PhD. I mean, this is the equivalence of it. Nobody is going to give it to you. You have to achieve, and then you have to show that you have the ability to divine, or have perception, or to be able to use your hands and body to do the work that is required of you to heal people, to not only heal their bodies, but their illnesses, but to also heal their emotions, their relations with their children, their husbands and wives. I mean, you have to be pretty much
Mm.
everything for your people that they need you to be.
I'm thinking about a couple of analogies or other places where this happens. Like, for someone to become a psychiatrist, not only do they have to go through all this medical school and everything else, but they must also undergo like this big psychoanalysis, right? That sometimes people who thought they're going to be a psychiatrist actually will walk away and go into another version of medicine because they just don't want to confront that, right? And then looking at maybe something like Catholicism, right? The priesthood school is something that takes many years of education, right? And then understudy and everything else.
It's so true. It's so true. And people will test you. It's not like you have to go through seminary, like the Catholic priest will have to do. But in Haiti, for example, and I'm from the United States, and they say, well, he has ason, which means that I have achieved the level of a high priest. Well, no one's just going to take that on face value,
Okay.
because there's going to be someone who challenges you. And quick story, we were in a place called Bel Air, up in the hills of Haiti, and we were getting people recruited in our organization for the National African Religion Congress, and everything was going great. And they took us out back into their compound where the spiritual activity takes place, and the man's son came to me. And well, we were talking, and I'm trying to use my best Creole, to keep up with him. and we picked up what was called an ason, which is an instrument that you shake, has beads all over it, small, just a small gourd. So we picked it up, he picked it up, and then he made an inference to the introduction to a conversation. And I responded. I said, oh, wow, because I was just interested in seeing all of the asons they had, how beautiful they had been strung. So I realized that he was trying to have a conversation with me in ason, and I answered. And then he spoke, and I answered. And then I was like, oh, stuff. And then we jumped out, and we began to talk. And he's questioning me. I'm answering him. And then he thought, oh, okay, well, that's good enough. But I wouldn't let him out of the conversation. Ross, I was able to then take this boy. I said, no, okay, now let me
You're
talk.
like, oh, you started this, so here we
Yeah.
go, right?
And we began to do, and the place got crowded. You would have thought like a theater. I don't know where the people came from, but people were screaming and yelling, and just cheering because they looked at this foreigner who now took over this conversation, and I'm having a conversation with him, for things that he has to answer. And then I take him to the ground, whereas you can now speak from a different language. And he's now on the ground, and I see he's struggling. So I let him out of the conversation, and we greet, and you go head to head, and you turn with each other, which is also a recognition of our connection in the cosmos. When we come together head to head, and we greet each other and we shake. Well, my wife was sitting off to the side with one of the high priests who had traveled from New York with her. He was Asian, and he got real scared, and he looked at my wife and goes, does he know? And she said, he better. And after it was over, Papa Guy is his name, Raymond Guy Saint Victor, jumps from, I saw him rise up and jump from where he was seated at over to the center where the boy's father was. And they do the handshake. There was a handshake. You would think we were Masons with all these secret handshakes and stuff. And he just, and the crowd just went crazy. The rum comes out, then the drums, and we were like, gotta go, But that's just an example, because nobody's going to give it to you. I see all these people online talking about, you can just go, there's a book or there's somebody online that can tell you how to be this or how to do that. Ross, that's a lie. If you don't have somebody who can put their hands on you with the energy and the knowledge in their mind to knowing what exactly they're doing, you cannot baptize yourself. You cannot be the one that read all of this stuff and go, okay, now you're going to hurt somebody. And I'm talking to anybody out there listening and watching this podcast. Do not be deceived, and do not do something that you think you can just read and learn from somebody telling it to you online, and then you go out and find that you're going to hurt somebody. And we have seen examples of it here in the States and elsewhere outside of the States, where people have been killed. All good intentions, that people were trying to help them, but they didn't know what they were doing.
Oh, so backing up to this conversation you had with what was the other person's name?
You're talking about what? And the ritual.
Yeah.
Dues. They call them dues. Means
Deuce.
speak.
Okay, so it's funny you say deuce, because what this is liking, what I'm liking this to is almost like a duel. Right?
Yeah, well, that's essentially what it comes down to, because if you don't, if you get caught up on a answer, for example, it's like touche.
Is there a way does this have a natural conclusion if two masters are having this this ritualistic conversation?
Sure, it is. Once they get to a point where they have the one who either initiated it particularly have come to a conclusion that the person that they are talking to in this ritual conversation is a master, to know all of these things, then he'll bow, and then they'll go to what it is that they flow with a ritual conclusion. And then they will come together with their heads, and they'll turn, like I said, and they will shake, and then that ends it, that lets, and the people know, you don't want to mess with him, for lack of a stronger word, if you know what I mean.
With modern technology, are any of these rituals now ever recorded? Are they made public, or what's the sort of philosophy around that inside of
A
your
lot of
religion and community?
Yeah, a lot of times when you come to, particularly in Haiti and here, they tell you things are, they welcome all. You'll see on outside of the sanctuaries, bienvenue tous or bien à tous, which means all are welcome. They don't care who you are, where you're from, your color, whatever. But on the back of it, when you're leaving, you'll see a word that says silence. And because what happens is, even though you may be there to witness the ritual like that, like the handshake, there's been some who have recorded it or took photographs of it or something like that. But it's not the kind of thing you want to try at home, because you would be invoking the presence of Loa, and they'll come and see that, number one, you don't they can just read and see that you're not one who should be invoking. And why did you call them? Because you can't play with them. They're so serious. Some Loa are very cool forces, and then some Loas are hot and fiery, and others are just very well, especially those out of the Congo, are very fiery forces. And you don't want to make the mistake and call something that you can't turn, you can't turn it off, and they become quite angry with you. And we've seen very, very terrible things of people trying to impress tourists or people like that didn't end well for them.
Okay, so you're hitting on something now that I'll just, for lack of a better term, is crossing a line from a practice of spirituality into, and no, this is my interpretation though, that now there's like a physical manifestation that can happen, and is what I'm sort of hearing from you. You say it doesn't end well or whatever. Like, what does that look like?
Well, if it's a physical manifestation, it's something that we call a loa possession or a mounting. But for the most part, also, it can be a spiritual manifestation that you don't want to encounter, because there may not be a mambo or a priestess there to beg, and literally on your behalf, to calm the force, and then offer it food or drink or something like that. Most of the time, those forces, the things that come are not physical, they're spiritual. And that's the thing that we have to, I wish, I've always said this, that I wish somebody could strap me through like a lie detector thing and let me tell them about the things that I have seen, witnessed, and have experienced. It would blow their mind, because they'll see that number one, I'm telling the truth, and number two, that I'm expressing things that people have never encountered, or never heard of. And so some of the things that people that they call demonic or devil or things like that, well, they have no idea that what, like, a lot of people will look at voodoo, for example, and be like, well, it's demonic, it's not of Christ, it's not, and nothing could be further from the truth. The honor of God, and the recognition and honor of Christ, the Blessed Mother, and all of these things was something particularly voodoo in Haiti does, because we had to hide behind Catholic lithographs and symbols in order for slave masters to be deceived that we were now good Christians.
Mm.
So becoming good Christian meant that we had the images of the Holy Mother, the images of the twins or the triplets, and or all of all of them. You name any of the icons, there is a Loa that we use to hide behind. And one of the things that I want to say openly to anyone, that because, and I mean this for Haitians or African American people, um, that we did not discard the icons, meaning now that we no longer have to hide our practices, we didn't discard them because those heavenly forces, yeah, they saw that through those images that were created help save our lives. They help bring us
Mm.
out of bondage. So what for I would have the meaning to discard Dolorosa or the Blessed Mother, you know, or Joseph or anyone like that. That it would be sacrilege. It would be, you know, like someone who took you in their home when you had nothing, and then after you back on your feet, you gave them your behind to kiss, and you just rolled on. That's just not what we do, and we get a lot of criticisms behind holding Catholic icons because most of them are seen as Caucasian, you know, or European, but it doesn't matter in our faith because we look at what you carry on your head. We look at the spiritual force, Ross, that you carry. And if I don't respect that, then I'm not respecting the Loa because you are alive and you have the spirit. There are things that happen for you you can't explain. There are things you see that you don't know, and you just like try to shake it off, like, well, maybe it didn't happen. But it's because you too have Loa. Everybody. If you are breathing, drinking water, have blood in your veins and a beating heart, then of course you are alive. You know, I see we have a few more minutes. I mean, a couple minutes left. Any place you want to get to?
Well, I just kind of want to comment on that, and I think it's interesting that you treat these symbols or maybe potentially concepts or whatever in that way, because I could understand how there could be a point of view of like these were forced upon us or we were forced to use these against our will, and that's their origins. And so this might be something that we would want to discard. But in your faith, that's not how you perceive those.
Exactly. Because I mean, when you think of place, there's a place called Sodo, for example, which is in the mountains, and it's a sacred waterfall. But before it was a waterfall, it was a very much impoverished place where the peasantry lived, and they pretty much enslaved by the local militia that was there, the French army and things like that. One day, the children, raggedy, some naked, I mean, this is how poor they just didn't have clothes, were playing in the field as children would play. And they looked up and they saw nestled in the palm tree, like a crown, a woman
Mm.
that was sitting there. And she was pinkish, you know, like, or Caucasian, you know, and I hate to use the word Caucasian because, you know, what is that? You know, and then she tossed them these oranges to eat, and she gave them gold of the likes no one had ever seen. And they went to their parents of course went to the army or the overseers. The people left. That happened again. It was a Thursday, each time a Thursday. And so they go back and they take an army personnel with them.
We got about 30 seconds left. So yeah, keep
Okay,
going.
real quick. The army personnel sees the woman sitting in nestle, fires a shot into the image. The image rises and moves to a different palm and nestles in it, holds up her arm and releases a white dove. The dove flies high and then thuds itself into the bedrock of the mountain, and up comes this water, and they call it again Saldo. And people, millions of people make pilgrimages. Maybe not now because of all of the unrest, but it is a healing water. I've actually been to it a few times, and so I know we're at the end of it.
Yeah,
But
we'll talk about that next time. So we got always things to say. So yeah, so quickly, George Turnage, Papa Yatande, thank you for being with us today. You can find him at yatande.com. Always welcome back into the show. Thank you.
Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure, Ross. Have
To
a
all
great
you, thank you for tuning in today. Until next time.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.